Sekai Boys.
Sekai Boys.
There's definitely still hints of racism. It's explicit and implicit.
And they're gonna have a hard time getting a visa and like moving and working to a different country, let's say Canada, then I would say just stay in the Philippines. Jansen.
My name's Vanessa.
26.
I'm 24.
Social worker.
I work in tech as an office worker in Vancouver, which is the west coast of Canada. We've always wanted to travel to Japan. We've always had an adoration. We actually grew up in the Philippines when we were kids before moving to Vancouver. And in the Philippines, we had a lot of channels with anime on it. So that's when we first got exposed to, I guess, one part of Japanese culture. And we just grew up with some parts of that. Majority of it is mostly anime, I want to say. I don't know what other, aside from that, food, I would say, is part of it. And it's just one of those places that we've always wanted to visit. I was about 11 years old.
Yeah, I was like 14. We spoke English and both like Tagalog,
Yeah.
which is like the language
Yeah.
in
So in the
Manila,
Philippines, there's two official languages. It's Tagalog and English. So it's mandatory for us to learn English in schools. It's been really great and fun, but at this point, we've been traveling for so long that we're very tired and ready to go
we just want to
home.
go home.
Yeah.
So we're flying out tomorrow, but I think it's been nice. We learned a lot of things from this trip because we're definitely coming back again in Japan at some point. But I think at this point we were just like the train lines are definitely confusing. There's a lot of times we got lost, but we're learning as we go, and we're also learning that there's definitely some places that we would like to have stayed longer, like Osaka and Kyoto. We wish we saw more of that rather than staying in Tokyo, because we stayed in Tokyo for longer than we did to the other parts. Yeah. I don't know. There's a lot. I feel like some of the best experience that we've had so far. Like I really like the Gundam museum in Yokohama. I really like that one. And every time we're eating, because food here is definitely like so much better than what we have in Vancouver. Because we have a lot of like Asian food options in Vancouver, but it's nothing compared to what we're eating here. Yeah, we love Japanese food.
I would say the best parts definitely were the parts that involved food for me. I love Asian food in general, which includes Japanese food. And all the places that we went to, there was great food, whether that was Tokyo, Osaka, or Kyoto. I think some of the worst parts maybe was a bit of the culture shock for us, which was really just how much more crowded we thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I would say so, because life is definitely easier back like in Canada than compared to if we had stayed in the Philippines. So, but also as an immigrant, it is still a struggle because it's very expensive in Canada. So whenever we would go back to the Philippines, we think that it's so much cheaper here, but lifestyle in general is so much harder in the Philippines than it would be back in like Vancouver for us, because we have good paying jobs that's compared to if we were to work in the Philippines and stay in the Philippines.
We probably have slightly different opinions just because I was much younger when we moved in. So I feel like the younger you are, the easier it is to adjust than it is the older you are. So I think for me, my experience wasn't as difficult. I do like Canada. There's definitely still hints of racism. It's explicit and implicit, where sometimes it's obvious, sometimes not very obvious. But if you compare it to places like America, it's definitely it doesn't compare to the Asian racism that you would get. A lot of it really, it's just the subtle treatments that you would get if you were, say for example, someone who was born there or someone who wasn't. In terms of whether or not I would stay in Canada, likely I would stay in Canada long term, or even permanently, just because I've at this point I've lived there for more than half my life, and I'm really used to the environment and living there. So I think that's a place that I would be comfortable in. But I would still want to be able to maybe travel or live other places before, but for small periods of time.
Yeah. For me, I would say I experienced a bit of racism when maybe when I was growing up, because if you work in retail, for example, that's when you experience it the most. And I worked retail for a long time while I was studying. But other than that, what she said, I agree. It's very, very subtle. It's just mostly comments here and there, or just a lot of assumption because we're Asian. But again, there's a lot of Asian population in Vancouver itself, so that's why we didn't really experience much of it. So that's why we're lucky to be like that. But for me, I would say I don't know if I'm gonna be staying in Canada forever, because unlike her, I actually do want to settle down somewhere else, because how I'm I don't know, somewhere in Asia for sure. I don't know if Philippines, Southeast Asia I really, really like, but maybe I'm considering East Asia as well, because now that we started traveling East Asia, I'm seeing different cultures and different expenses, and just in general, if I'm even able to financially um support myself, I feel like it's more probable for me to do that in Asia than if I would in North America. Because like I said, I'm a social worker. She works in corporate. Unless you work in corporate in North America, you're not going to be making a lot of money.
Yeah.
I work in social work, and so I'm going to try and see where I can explore that more. One of the things that I learned recently is because we did this food tour in Izakaya, and then the tour guide that we had was a Japanese woman that studied in LA, and we were talking briefly about the work culture in Japan, and it seems like it's a lot more intense than it is back in North America, so we were kind of shocked by it. But again, my opinion might be different from hers, because I am pro, or I am for exploring more. So in terms of that, if you want to explore more other opportunities outside of your country, then go for it, as long as it's there. Just take the opportunity if you can. And so how to improve it, really, the internet, and I feel like the culture of internet usage here in Japan is very similar to other Asian countries, which is a lot of internet usage. Befriend international people, and speak English with them, because that's another free way for you to improve your English. So if you want to pursue something that's international and mostly English based, then that's something that you can do to practice your English. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say my advice is for anyone who feels like they they don't like where they're at. They feel like they're settling, so to say. Say it's you keep imagining that you could do more, but you're not. If you want to do that, then I would say kind of on her foot, try it if there's an opportunity to do it. In terms of learning English, I hate to say it, but it is very powerful to be proficient in English or have a certain level of proficiency in English, because it's an international language. Even if you're not going to the Western countries, even if you go to other countries in Asia where you don't know the local language, that could be Philippines, the only common ground you would have would be English. So regardless, it's going to be very helpful. The tip would be, find people who you get to have conversations with. Again, we had that izakaya food tour in Shinjuku where our guide wasn't actually very fluent in English, but she was telling us that from months of working as a tour guide, she was able to practice with foreigners her English and learn not only grammar but also proper pronunciation and understanding what words mean. I think with every language, even with Japanese, we had to Google, when do you say thank you versus when do you say please. A lot of it is based on context or the scenario. So I think unless you're in active conversation with people, it's very, very difficult to actually learn other languages or just in general communication. It's you don't have to say words. Here people bow a lot, but there's an appropriate time to bow versus not.
the thing is, if they already have a good career back in the Philippines and they're gonna have a hard time getting a visa and like moving and working to a different country, let's say Canada, then I would say just stay in the Philippines.
Yeah.
Because it's so much work, like especially immigrations right now. Every year it's getting harder and harder to people, and it's getting more and more expensive for people to immigrate. And even in Canada, is one of the countries that are known to be an easy place to immigrate.
I would say if you like, but to her point, if you have an established career and you have a life here, you have friends, everything, and again you're older, say like your late 20s or 30s, etc., it's easier to stay where you are depending on what your career is, because we've met a lot of people in Canada and in America that, you know, we're professors at universities, or we're you know, software managers, or very, you know, well careered people that once they move to another country, these countries sometimes don't recognize your resume, or they don't recognize your work experience, your education, so they make you start again.
Yeah.
So the older you are, you know, the harder it is to start again, because, you know, I've met a lot of people who were twice my age while I was in college that were in the same classes as me, but they had 20 years of experience already, but they had to go to school again to get the same degree because they're not being recognized in North America.
Yeah, which kind of sucks, you know. I met a lot of people as well. When I was working in retail, I was working with people that were engineers back in their country or doctors back in their country, yet we still had the same job. So that's kind of like, you know, that's kind of sad because of this idea of that, oh, there's more opportunities like somewhere else. But honestly, if you have already a good career established in your country, then don't do it. But if you are young and you have a lot more potential that you can explore, you don't have an established career yet, then yes, I recommend, you know, exploring more in other countries if you have the chance.
But I think no matter what age you are, young or old, if you really want to do it, you can try. You need to be prepared and ready to start again.